The member for Fremantle.
Deputy Speaker, it is certainly time for the Australian government to get serious about the issue of waste and resource management, because it's a grave matter of environmental degradation and it's a clear market failure. It's also a missed opportunity in terms of innovation and new jobs in manufacturing. In terms of the current extinction crisis in Australia, the fact that we are sadly leading the world when it comes to mammal extinctions, the fact that according to the Deputy Director of the Threatened Species Hub, a quarter of Australian species are effectively in the waiting room just outside the ICU. You have to remember that marine species and marine ecosystems are at risk as a result of plastic waste. So, of course, it's a good thing that we're talking about it, but we have to do a lot more than just talk about it. I'm also glad there's an Assistant Minister for Waste in the form of the member for Brisbane, and I wish him well. But as the Shadow Assistant Minister for the Environment, I'm concerned that the government's newfound and reactive interest in the issue is not matched by a commitment to take real action. I hope I'm wrong. We produce a lot of waste in Australia on a per capita basis. We don't reuse or recycle very much of it, and that's especially true when it comes to plastic, which is a particular problem. It might be a wonder material in some respects, but it is without doubt an environmental nightmare. And it will shock many Australians to know that when they sort out the plastic for the recycling bin, hardly any of it is reprocessed or recycled in Australia. More and more plastic is turning up in the gut of fish and turtles and birds. And that's awful in itself, but it also has the potential to affect human health. Globally, 15 million tonnes of plastic waste is getting into the ocean each year through rivers and stormwater systems, through coastal dumping and poor fishery practices, and that is projected to double by the year 2025. It's currently predicted that by 2050 there will be as much plastic in our oceans by weight as fish. Take the next logical step from that shocking statistic. The plastic will be in the fish, the fire retardants and the colorants from the plastic will be in the fish, and then those chemicals, some of which are carcinogenic, will be in us. Yet it's only really now that countries are refusing to take our plastic waste that we're waking up to the problem, and the government's waking up to the problem. If a country like Australia can't do much better, we're hardly going to be in a position to expect less developed nations in our region to improve their approach, and a lot of that plastic waste is ending up on our shores. So there's no doubt that this is a matter crying out for national leadership. That's why Labor introduced a national waste strategy in 2011 with a product stewardship framework to start the process by which companies take responsibility for the waste recovery of certain products. And at the recent election, we promised to introduce a National Waste Commissioner to provide $60 million in direct funding for waste initiatives, to ban the single-use plastic bags and microbeads, and create a national container to deposit scheme. The Coalition has not taken up a single one of those initiatives, nor have they taken up some of the key recommendations from the 2018 Senate inquiry on waste, which included setting procurement targets for the use of recycled material by federal agencies and in projects that receive federal funding, the implementation of all 65 agreed improvements to the national waste reporting process, and mandatory product stewardship arrangements for things like tyres and e-waste. Deputy Speaker, the government has made quite a song and dance about its $167 million recycling investment plan. It is utterly ridiculous for the member of Ryan to describe that as an unprecedented approach to waste management. $100 million of that program, fully 60% of the program spending as a whole, is not new or additional money. It's a labelling exercise. It's money that's been in the CEFC. It's been dispersed by the CEFC in previous years. There's not $1 of more funding. It is not new or additional in any way, shape or form. So that kind of costuming exercise doesn't inspire a lot of confidence at a time when we're supposed to be doing more about plastic waste and we're supposed to be doing more about waste and resource management in general. We desperately need national leadership on waste and resource management. Various state and territory governments are stepping up. Local governments around Australia are pioneering new methods of reuse and recycling. Communities around Australia are keen to do their bit, and it is well past time for the federal government, for our national government, to come to the party. If we get it right, there are considerable benefits for Australia in terms of new and innovative manufacturing opportunities. But most importantly of all, our environment absolutely requires it. The community expects us to get on with it, and the test is whether the government will respond to those calls.